If you are not a believer in UFOs or aliens, you may change your mind after listening to this very bizarre case. When sightings of extraterrestrials are reported, they are generally isolated to one or two people. But what if an entire country reported the exact same thing? You are now within minutes of horror because we are now going to be discussing what is now known to be Brazil's Roswell. This very strange event took place in Varginha, Brazil in 1996. On January 20th of that year, three young women, Liliane and Valaquira Fatima Silva, and their friend, Katia Xavier, decided to take a shortcut home through a vacant parking lot where they allegedly encountered a strange creature. Not missing a beat, all three girls gave the exact same description of the creature that they saw. They reported it to having large red eyes, oily brown skin, V-shaped feet, and three round bulges on the top of its head. With the entity looking dazed and confused, the girls tried to move in closer to it. All of a sudden, it turned around and had its focus directly on the girls. Terrified, all three girls ran home and informed their mother of what they saw. Their mother, not believing them, goes to the site with the girls. The creature is not there, but the mother does confirm there was a very strong ammonia smell in the area that was so strong they had to evacuate immediately. 2 or 3 days later, after this incident, a few people surrounding a creature they'd never seen before was lying dead on the side of the road. It matched the same description all three girls gave, including the bulges on the top of its head. One of the locals, so disturbed by what he is seeing, runs back to his home nearby, calls the police to investigate, but instead of police, 3 large military trucks arrive. These trucks are full of people, what appears to be military to even doctors. Military personnel get out of the vehicles with guns and make the people leave the area by force. They are not given any warnings. They say, if you're still here, we will fire upon you. As the locals are leaving, from a distance they can still see men in hazmat suits get out of the vehicle, scoop up the creature, and put it back into the truck. They immediately take off. Not too much longer after this, gossip started that there was a larger than usual presence of military at a Brazilian military base that was generally unoccupied. Here's where things become even more bizarre. All 3 trucks headed to a local hospital where, by force again, with guns, they made everyone evacuate the hospital. Whether you were sick or staff, you had to leave. Even if you were on your deathbed, you had to go to another hospital. As the people were leaving, they heard all this strange commotion and bizarre code words they'd never heard before. They watch as doctors who never worked in this hospital before rush in. So as you can see, it wasn't too much longer that opinions were quickly formed that in Varginha that several aliens were taken into custody by the Brazilian military. In the following year, more eyewitnesses approached the media with reports of cigar-shaped spacecraft and additional creatures being found in areas such as the local Varginha Zoo by a janitor whose description of the creature still continued to match the description that many others in Varginha were giving. Not only was the physical description still the same, but everyone also reported a very intense odor. More than a quarter century later, interest in this case has been renewed after the release of a documentary, Moment of Contact, which sees filmmaker James Fox return to the small town of Varginha to interview eyewitnesses, experts, and officials. The documentary even interviews retired Brazilian Air Force General Jose Carlos, who states governments tend to cover up everything they can't explain to their population. The documentary also states that in 1996, of the same year the creatures were spotted by locals in Varginha, there were reports of a strange cigar-shaped object about the size of a school bus slowly falling from the sky and crashing into a field. Interviewed was Carlos de Souza, who witnessed the alleged crash and spoke to researcher Clauder Covo on camera in 1996. In his own words, he said it was floating and slowly losing altitude at the time. It looked like a cigar that was fighting to keep its altitude. The side of it was completely torn, and it had white smoke coming out of it. It wasn't black smoke like a fire. At the time, I thought it was an aircraft in trouble, so I decided to follow it. 26 years later, in the documentary, De Souza is interviewed again by the filmmakers. They decide to return to the crash location just up a hill from a small white farmhouse, where he broke down in tears. He said, "When I arrived at this very spot, I observed a lot of debris, pieces," he said. "And when I got out of the car, I immediately smelled ammonia, like rotten eggs. A very strong smell, so strong that I had to cover my nose with my shirt, and even my eyes got watery." D'Souza said right away he realized something was very different from what he was expecting, because first, due to the smell made no sense whatsoever. He also said what he saw to be a sheet of aluminum, so he took a small piece, crumbled it in his hand, and when he released it, it went right back into its original shape. Not too much longer, within minutes however, Mr. D'Souza said military trucks arrived from a nearby army base from Varginha and ordered him to leave, threatening him with their guns. Any Varginha local that was interviewed in this documentary were absolutely stunned at the large military presence that descended on the town, cordoning off several blocks and preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Liliane Silva, Valkyria Silva, and Katia Xavier, the girls who told their mother about the creature, now adults, returned to the location in the documentary to recount their experience, still visibly disturbed, giving the exact account as to what happened, describing the creature as they did before, with the intense, powerful ammonia smell. The Brazilian military said the girls saw something, but in 2010, an official inquiry had concluded that the girls had actually encountered a homeless and mentally unstable man nicknamed Maninho, covered in mud. Here comes the even stranger part of the documentary. Remember when I spoke about people having to leave the hospital? Well, interviewed was one of the men wearing a hazmat suit who picked up the strange creature, stating he was smelly. He had a strange feeling of something greasy or sticky that covered its entire body. He stated that the creature was rushed to the local hospital, and later it developed an infection that wouldn't go away, and for 2 or 3 weeks it was getting worse and worse and worse, and that the infection eventually killed him. The centerpiece of the film is an interview with an anonymous whistleblower dubbed Military X, who claims to have been involved in transporting the body of a creature from the Humanitas Hospital in Varginha to an army base. He said he saw a stainless steel table, and on top of this table was a box. There were doctors and people carrying clipboards analyzing. It looked like they all seemed scared of it, and when I looked, I saw something different. A different creature with skin very oily, a lot of oil-like silicone. Seeing that, I got scared, he said. Military X also told the interviewer that one of the soldiers present had a film camera and that there was for sure video in possession by the government. He said what caught my attention was the foot. It was like this V shape, practically 2 fingers. What led me to believe that it wasn't human was the foot. The filmmakers also spoke with a former Brazilian air traffic controller who claimed the U.S. Air Force landed unannounced in Campinas and dispatched 2 helicopters to Varginha, where they collected something and took it away. What was collected is not known, but something was rescued, he said. The documentary ends with a message stating filmmakers continue to pursue video and photographic evidence which our investigations conclude exist in Brazil. According to local military and civilian witnesses, the bodies and crash debris were appropriated by agents from the United States of America. This all comes at a time of renewed attention on the subject of UFOs by the US government. This is one of the more convincing UFO cases that I've ever heard because of all the different testimonies, but everyone's saying they've all saw the same thing. Not just describing what it looked like, but everyone interviewed was describing this very powerful ammonia smell. There is not one doubt in my mind that something odd was going on in Varginha, Brazil in 1996. I always believed UFOs and aliens to be one of 2 things. They're either demons or beings that come from another plane of existence, maybe from another dimension, a 4th dimension, a 5th dimension, but whatever they are, they do have complete mastery over our laws and physics. Just like we have complete mastery over anything that is 2-dimensional, take a piece of paper, you can bend it to your whim in any way you see fit. Whatever these beings are, we definitely are not alone. But thank you so much for watching. If you like this content and you want to see more, please subscribe and hit that notification button. before this channel is abducted.